talk is about corn production and to some degree soybean and wheat production. Because of the very wet weather that we've had in North America, it's included our Canadian friends also. If you've been paying any attention to any of the websites, my area, Northwest Ohio, is probably considered the epicenter of this whole thing. And we do have a fair amount of acres that are not planted. Guys are going to take prevent planting. There was a lot of acres slapped in the last 10 days. Guys trying to decide whether they could do better by getting the crop in and then taking the insurance on it. But again, so much of that was planted after the prevent plant date. So that's going to be very questionable. Some of these beans are just starting to come out of the ground. We've got a long way to go. We've gone dry. Many areas, same thing, Michigan, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana. After all that heavy rain, now it's rock hard. And really we're looking forward to this hurricane in the Gulf coming up into this area and giving us some rain to get some of this stuff going. Most of it got out of the ground, but it needs some help now at this point. And see, that's really the big unknown as far as the corn crop particularly is concerned. We had another government report that came out today. They released a report on the 28th of June discussing, how many actual acres were planted, and the U.S. government said that we planted more acres of corn this year than was planted last year. And again, the market is not believing any of that. The survey was taken before the prevent plant date, which in most areas is the 5th of June. From the end of May through about the 12th of June, there was just so much rainfall that stuff that was planted was basically planted in mud. And so the yield is now the big interest that everybody has. And the market pretty well told the U.S. government today what they thought of their survey. It increased the carry on both world stocks of corn and U.S. stocks of corn, and the market went up about 15 cents. So again, the traders are telling the government that they don't believe a word they're saying. And this kind of substantiates where the farmers are at. Yield is going to be the big name of the game. They've actually extended the report date on these acres for U.S. farmers in certain states until the 22nd. The original date was the 15th of July, and now it's been pushed back to the 22nd, but that'll still put it within the realm of the next government report, which comes out the 12th of August, which will be a whole new fabrication or a whole new listing of what the actual total corn yield is going to be. And our contacts around the country are basically telling us they're all saying the same thing. The corn crop does not look good. There are nice fields, no doubt about it, but there's a lot of fields that are really struggling. And so if you're in a position where you've got to get feed, this is going to be a very big issue. Right now, for particularly my ethanol plant is paying almost 80 cents basis right now, so they've got that price of corn up to about $5.15. So that for a Midwestern bid, that's pretty high. And see, that's what we're seeing in the East is these high basis numbers because these companies, whether it be feeders, people feeding corn, or people that are making ethanol, they really have the contacts out in the field to know exactly what's going on, and it's not good. So again, that is part of the reason with our guys tonight is to talk about forage, because we're hearing a lot of different reports, the loss of alfalfa, the lateness of making forage. One of these guys kind of talk about what their experience is with that and what their experience is working with the product. Had a big hog farmer talk to me about foliar feeding, trying to get the quality up. He's trying to help the yield. He says, I've got a certain percentage of corn that looks pretty darn good, but I've got some corn that's the worst looking corn I've ever raised. Now, how can we affect that quality-wise? What do we have to spend? And see, that's another thing that's kind of coming to the forefront. A lot of these fertilizer suppliers, co-ops, are now coming out with foliar feeding products, telling farmers that, well, you can really help that crop along with foliar feed, whereas a couple of years ago they were saying foliar feeding didn't work. And so again, as a company, we were again vindicated on this thing. And what we're telling farmers is you should work with somebody that's got some experience with that, because you need a hot mix. You got to have the balance. That's another thing. Ken Ferry has a podcast out now for the Corn College in Illinois, and one of the points he's going to be covering is the corn fallow syndrome. And what that means is if you take prevent plant, you don't raise a crop in there, the growth of the mycorrhizal fungi that release phosphorus out of the soil does not occur. And when you come back next year and you try to put corn in there, the release of phosphorus out of the soil is going to be very, very poor until you get warm weather in the middle of June. And he's saying the only way to overcome that corn fallow syndrome is to use row starter phosphorus. And he said the real trick to that is you got to have zinc in there, because that helps to make the phosphorus absorbable. And see, this is what Dr. Tejan said in 1955. You've got to get the balance in there, gentlemen, in order to get those nutrients into the plant. And see, all of this syndrome problem, the overall issues that we're having with the stress this year are just substantiating everything we've said as a company. So again, we think we have a lot of things to talk about and how we can help farmers with this situation. And again, we understand the problems with it. Our guys are dealing with the weather just like everybody else is. So I'm going to start out with a gentleman from southwestern Indiana by the name of Marty Whitsitt. Marty's been with us a fair number of years. He has a cow-calf operation, a lot of pasture, makes a lot of hay. He's in an area that tends to be kind of wet sometimes, and so he's dealt with these making first cutting, well into June or even the 1st of July. And so I think he's got a few things he can talk about. And Marty, if you're still on there, if you'll just come on and talk a little bit about forage, how you approach it, what you think guys can do, with foliar feeding with the grower's product.
Yeah, I was going to correct a little bit on cutting first cutting 1st of July. I've only got about half of my first cutting done now, so we're running late. But I'm not sitting around wringing my hands on it. The big thing on all of this is whether or not the cows will eat it and what you get out of it. And I can't say if it's all the limestone or all the foliar feeding, but you put the two of them together and it just works. Cutting late doesn't matter to me. I don't get concerned about that at all. I've done it several times and the cows do just fine on it. So, if a guy wants to live on the forage analysis, that's just as valuable as a soil test. Just keep it in the outhouse, because the cows will tell you more about what your crop is than what that analysis will. Yeah, I got hay to make yet. I've got a small patch that I cut about 2 weeks ago, and it will not be baled at all. It's been rained on at least 6 times. So, it's difficult when you got mud on the ground and rain coming from above. It's hard to make dry hay, but we'll get there eventually. But
what do you see, Marty, as far as planting is concerned? In your neighborhood there in Southwest Indiana. Is there prevented planting, or has guys just kept right on planting? What's that situation?
The bean drills have been running like crazy this past week. They're kind of putting a lot of acres of beans in. I know there's some taken. I've seen a few fields that have been left prevented planting. Some are taken in, especially the river bottoms naturally, but a lot of other fields are hitting really hard on that to ram some more beans in the ground. Smaller farmers are bragging this year that they're big farmers because they planted the same ground 3 times, so they're 3 times the farmer they were before. But we got some cornfields. They're starting to come alive some now with the better temperatures that we've had. But a lot of uneven growth, and then you see a lot of places just a few days hitting in the 90s. And my thermometer at the farm showed 100 yesterday, and some of them fields are starting to suffer already. It's starting to roll up, but that, just the effect of being planted in the mud and whatever else, like you were talking.
Mm-hmm. What are the guys that you associate with in the cattle business? What are they saying about forage? And then the other question I'm getting a lot of is guys want to know what the demand for straw is. That there's just a lot of wheat ground that went to beans or was intended to go to beans, but because it was so poor that the price of straw could get kind of interesting in the Midwest.
Yeah, a lot of guys around here. I mean, the biggest thing I hear about on straw is there's a company around Evansville that makes environmental mats. So they stitch it together to make them roll out in erosion control mats. So that's one of the bigger markets around here. But it's one of them. Once the word got out that they were buying, there were so many people rolled up straw that they wouldn't take it. They started getting real picky on what they would take. Couldn't have any corn stalks in there if they'd bend their needles or something. So I'm not very well versed on what straw prices are doing. Other than that,
what about the hay market? Are the hay prices have they gone up? Like up here in Worcester, in Ohio, that they've gotten pretty stiff.
Yeah, the guys that don't make their own hay were worrying a lot, I think. So they were basically begging for it when they started hearing that guys couldn't get their hay made. So I think they were getting a little antsy and wanted to be the first ones to make sure they had their supply. So I think I expect that price to change a little bit, but I can't guarantee that either.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that you've got some rivers and creeks that go through there that basically been out of their banks. Well, they just went back in maybe 10 days ago or something like that, but been out of their banks since early March or something like that. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, the main one near me is Patoka. It's got Patoka Lake at the head of it, and it has run over the overflow a couple times at the lake, but whenever the rainfall would subside some, then the Corps of Engineers was trying to get the lake level down, so they just kept holding the river up. But, I mean, you know as well as I do that water just can't leave like it normally does until that river gets down in its banks. So a lot of places that we normally had wet spots was kind of odd. They didn't seem any wetter than usual, and then other places where we didn't normally have wet spots, there are major springs running out of there this year. Mother Nature and how water, as you say, keeping you humble.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, hey, I appreciate it, Marty, very much.
Ready.
Das ist Jim Halbert, da. Er ist mal ab.
Very good. Hey, Mike Bolsher.
Yes,
sir. Are you still there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. This is Mike Bolsher. Mike's down by Dayton, Ohio, and Mike's like Marty, got a cow-calf operation, sells hay also, row crops also. So I just asked Mike to come on, talk a little bit about his area, and as far as row crops, what's happening, and then what he's doing as far as making hay and what his position is and what's his hay look like. So, Michael, go right ahead.
Yeah, well, like you said, we're gearing up for a year to remember around here. There's a lot of the big guys didn't quite get everything planted. A lot of preventive planted acres was taken around here, and since we got such a shortage on forage in this area, the corn being planted late, and we got, I don't want to say we're intense dairy. There's quite a few dairies around here and a whole lot of feeding operations. And one of the things they're doing down here in preventive plant is they've let them go in and plant some kind of a forage crop as a cover crop and then preventive planted acres. And they're doing that to try to supply more forage for the shortage that we've had as far as, just like the wheat situation, that got limited. A lot of that didn't get made for forage. Some of that they usually do make for wheatlage, but it wasn't good enough to keep as a crop. Most of it was terminated and put to beans or something else. But in this preventive plant, what they're doing is they're putting in, you can put corn or Sudan grass or something like that that they can make for a forage. And the corn, they was telling me the other day that it has to be planted in 30-inch rows over 28,000 or in 15 or 20-inch rows. And I'm not sure what the population of that is, but at any rate, they're having them do that so they don't get an ear on the stalk, that it can just be used for chopping. So maybe, Ken Ferry, I'd like to hear that, of what you were saying earlier. But almost seems like to me that wouldn't make much of a difference the following year as far as what you put on as a pop-up. Maybe you can put more input into that. They're still growing a crop. And as far as I know, they put something on as a starter. I see a lot of them that looks like they're running liquid in them tanks. So I don't think they're just planting it without something underneath of it, the way it looked. But,
the issue with that, Mike, is the crop that grows this year stimulates the fungi that actually releases phosphorus, and see that rebuilds that population so that fungi is there next year. If you don't put a crop in there that helps stimulate that fungi, the population gets very, very low, and then when you come in next year and try to grow a crop, that's when you'll suffer with a lack of phosphorus. And so there are certain crops that do a better job at that. The legumes do a better job at it. Oats will do a little bit better job at it. That's why they're trying to get guys to go to the cover crop on the prevent plant to get away from that fallow syndrome.
Yeah, so I noticed that they're putting, with the corn that they're putting in this for chopping acres, it did look like they were putting on, some kind of pop-up with it, and they're also using herbicides and stuff. So they're growing it like a crop.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Now the Sudan grass, I can't really comment on that. It looked like to me a lot of them was just drilling that in.
Mm-hmm.
And this straw shortage thing is pretty big down here in our area. I sold $4 bale straw here late winter, whenever things was kind of getting stretched on into the spring here. It was still raining, and nobody was able to let their cattle or horses or whatever out, so they were still in the barns, and straw got really scarce, and people buying it up around here. There's probably not a field of wheat that was run around here that somebody didn't have the straw bought way before the wheat ever got in the head. They was looking around for it, and as you go farther south, them fellas down there didn't get their soybeans off till December last year, and that made a huge shortage in the wheat crop coming in. There was all through the winter I had calls. It's kind of interesting, how when you're in a business like I am, selling hand straw, and there's years you don't hear of people that you've heard of before, and you get a year of scarce, phone rings, and you're kind of surprised who you hear from. But there's people looking for straw pretty desperately for this coming year, just because like these hydroseeder operations, and I had some lumber companies and stuff like that I've dealt with over the years that usually like to stock a little straw for the home, buyer, or the people that see grass around the house, or maybe they got a dog or something like that. But they had no straw to buy because the people that was supplying them didn't get any wheat out. So it was a big issue. It's still a big issue. Other thing that,
go ahead, Mike.
Well, one other thing that was a big deal last year too, that I don't know what's going to unfold like this fall. We didn't get corn stalks baled around here because they mudded the corn out of the field, and a lot of them tried getting in there and baling stalks, and they wasn't able to get anything baled. Many of them couldn't. He's out there mudding their round balers around out in the field basically, and they had to give up and quit. And a lot of this corn was made when it was, or taken off when it was snowing and things like that. So it got to be a real problem. Guys that don't usually bale straw was counting on baling fodder, and they didn't get the fodder baled. So it made straw very short. And then as we got into spring, the same thing followed with hay. And we had a lot of people around here that come out of winter, and there was a lot of reports that this hay had lodged and they'd lost it over the winter, and guys were really breathing a big sigh of relief because their hay was in good shape, or they felt it was in good shape. There was some lodging. There were some people said they had that, but then we got this 3-4 months of hard rain like we got, and the rain just couldn't take it. Most of the hay around here in this area, the alfalfa anyway, was lost because of all the rain and the flooding that happened since winter. That's when guys really started losing their hay.
So where's your hay market? Where's your hay market at right now? Pretty steep?
Well, we made first cutting here 2 weeks ago, and I'll tell you, it wasn't nothing to brag about. It was just first that we could really get on the fields and get the hay made without cutting anything up or anything. And hay short. I mean, I had calls when we was planting corn. We got pushed for planting corn. We had to do it in a very short window around here whenever it did finally come fit to do. And I had several calls for wanting to buy hay that I was really glad, when you stop the tractor and talk to somebody about hay when you're planting corn, you're glad to hear from them. I had to turn a lot of my customers away. I was either running out of hay for myself and I couldn't sell any, or I just didn't have any extra hay to sell. And of course, a few of them was very upset, and I thought, well, my loss is a customer. But anyway, first cutting, when it did roll around, I had several phone calls to make because I had people told me, just the second you get hay down, call me. I want to come to the field and buy it right out of the field. So I sold a lot of my hay right out of the field this year, $5 a bale. Loaded some of it on their wagons. I was pretty impressed with the comments I got from my hay. Now, for me, it was nothing to brag about. I mean, it was made very late and very mature. And like Marty says, maybe it won't make any difference. I did not get no foliar done on it this spring because we were just unable to get on the field. Mm-hmm. And part of our practice is we always foliar in the spring. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get that done. I'll have to tell you this. I got 25 acres of alfalfa hay. It was seeded last year. It took the rain. We got alfalfa hay. It's a very beautiful stand right now. And to say I owe that all to growers, I owe that to Growers Program. The liming part of what we're doing here has been one of the most important things that we've done over the years. I mean, we believe in using the product, but we are big believers in the program. Mm-hmm. And the program has always paid us back for using it as we feel correctly on this farm. We've always been able to get a beneficial crop, whether it's a lot or just a continuous crop that we haven't had to reseed. We've been real thankful for how the program works with the calcium and, of course, using the product. So
that field you're talking about is one you sent me the picture of?
Yeah. You seen what it looked like?
Yeah. No, it was excellent. Excellent.
That is a rarity in these parts today. We got people I seen a new seeding of alfalfa not far from here that somebody put in, but a lot of guys have went in and seeded Sudan grass or something in their pastures because they have no forage. They have no hay.
Yep. So. Okay. Hey, Michael, I appreciate it very much. Excellent job.
No problem.
Hey, Gerald, are you still there, partner?
Yep, I'm still here.
Okay, very good. This is Gerald Hirsch. We tried to get him on last month, and I don't know, we had some problems with our system. But Gerald farms in Lancaster County, and I just wanted to get him on last month to kind of give you guys some ideas of what's happening in the East. They always seem to be a garden spot, according to the guys up in New York and even over in Western Pennsylvania. But I thought I'd get him on to kind of fill us in on what's happening in Lancaster County, and then he was going to check with some of the forage boys to find out what the forage situation was and kind of tell us or update us on that too. So, Gerald, you go ahead and take it, and then you head in any direction you want to head in.
Well, I was the direction I was going most of the last couple of weeks was in the corn rows, trying to keep after spraying. But it was, we got through it, most of it, and still putting some nitrogen on today again. But as far as the forage, I didn't ask, around a lot, but fellows I did talk to, it seemed like the timing wasn't too bad on, making alfalfa hay, but no dry, very little dry hay, mostly, put in a silo or wrap it, high moisture. And it gave a lot, and the quality was down a little bit, but things so far so good. It's just we have a lot, and the quality is down some.
Guys didn't seem to lose the alfalfa like we're seeing in the Midwest.
By spots we did. I mean, I look out in my field, and in one corner, we mowed, and it was probably about 1/6 of the field. It really shone green as soon as we got the hay off, and that's all grass. It was very little alfalfa in that one corner, but the rest looks real good. As far as the small grain forage, that was a little touch and go this year. There's a lot of guys, put rye or triticale trying to make forage. The whole farm they'll do, after they chop corn silage, this is the dairies, they'll try to get everything planted with rye or triticale or wheat, something like that. And so a lot of those guys don't have alfalfa anymore, and they get their triticale off, all manure, plant corn. The neighbor did it the other way around. He got his triticale spent about 10 days out after he cut it. That wasn't quite something you would see if you win any prizes for that stuff. But he said it wasn't too bad. It was cool. It wasn't hot and sunny any time while that was laying, and he was able to turn it a couple times. He got it in, and the field was terrible. They stayed off of it, and then about 10 days later, I believe he went over to vertical tillage, and he got some corn planted, and then after the corn was planted, then he spread liquid manure.
What's the straw situation, Gerald? I mean, is the guys lose a lot of wheat, or did the wheat crop pretty well make it through, and guys are making straw out of that?
Well, I have yesterday they combined my wheat here, and I believe we averaged a little bit over 90. I was happy. We did a little bit better last year. The neighbors around here, a lot of people did over 100 last year, so it's not quite as good, but we didn't know what to expect. It just kept raining. We were trying to make, they've been trying to combine wheat for 2 weeks. And so now my straw, and there's the combine runs through and the straw comes out really wet. And nobody has fit straw. You always have to play with it for a little. So now we had an inch of rain on it, but I'm glad we got the wheat in. That was maybe 15%, 13 to 15% moisture. That went in the neighbor's bin, and they have they have the heater going and
Sure.
they're steriles, and so that's how we're handling that. And
Did you spray that with a fungicide, Gerald?
I did, and you could really see that where we turned in the field. I didn't go after the corners. We just, we don't do we just as least amount of tracks as possible, and you could really see that color difference. It was nice and light colored, and then it was really like a black at the corners where you didn't get any fungicide. Gotcha. And we used that new Maravis Ace, I believe they call it. So that was supposed to give us a little bit wider window. Correct application. I don't like putting fungicide on, and that made it at least a little bit better. We had a couple of days to put it on instead of a couple hours.
Did you struggle planting corn? I mean, did the area struggle planting corn, or did you have some pretty decent windows to plant corn?
Well, if you look back, I don't know that there was any time that it was exactly fit, but it was, with the amount of rain we got and the corn, I believe 95% of the corn acres got planted, but everything a little later than the guys wanted it. And with the way everything is, the corn looks really good, for the way it was planted. It just wasn't really all that fit. And there are fields out there that are not very nice, mostly where the guys were trying to get their forages off in the mud. And they did give 10 days where it the sun shone and it did get pretty near fit, but then they had to deal with all their liquid manure yet, and that's what I told the neighbor. I said, I wonder if it'd be better if he would plant his corn and the ground is fit rather than try and put manure on and then try and plant corn and he can't wait long enough. Plant the corn in the ground that's fit, and then they ran over it with this. They didn't use any trucks. It was all tractors with spreaders that put tires on, and it looks pretty good. I think it looks really good actually for the way everything was. So,
hey, one last question I've got for you.
Sure.
You're talking about putting some nitrogen on corn. Are you guys? Are most of the guys side dressing with a toolbar or coulters, or are there guys wide dropping?
In our area, I don't. I just use my sprayer with a 100-foot boom and put the drop straight between each 30-inch row, and right on top. I do it a little bit primitively, and it rains. It rains every so often.
Washes it in.
I feel like that wide drop. A lot of guys, it's heavy, and you have to use a narrower boom, turn around more often, and I wasn't real anxious to do it, so I just kept on the way I was doing. And as far as doing it with a toolbar, there's I don't know that I've seen any done in our area here, but I know over towards Mount Joy, the other side of Lancaster, I know there's guys do it, but here pretty much put the 30% down or 28005 sulfur. There's a lot of guys at the crop consultants are all kind of recommending that, or else if they got ammonium sulfate up front, then maybe just 30% here now side dressing. That's what we do.
Okay. Hey, appreciate it, Gerald. We got her in there, partner. You did a great job. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Okay.
Hey, Zach.
Yep.
You're in charge now. that's our part of the program, and hopefully that gives the guys something to think about.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That was good. Dennis, are you there?
I'm here.
Great. So
You hear me?
Dennis will be talking now. Yep, I can hear you. Dennis is in Maryland. He does a lot of nutrient management plans for guys out there where it's mandated. He is going to talk on the July picture, which on the left-hand side, there's two pictures there. The right-hand side is an old picture of Dr. Tejan's. The left-hand side is a soybean plant with a lot of pods on it.
Out.
So, Dennis, if you want to start talking on that, and then if there's anything else regarding what you've seen in Maryland or anything like that, then we'd be happy to hear that too. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that soybean plant has 196 pods on it. We didn't go looking for that plant in the area of the field where these plants were growing. We just went out and pulled one and laid it out in the driveway and counted pods, took a picture. Interesting thing was it's a very sandy soil where these beans were growing. He had limed a couple tons of lime to the acre about 2 years before, and this lime has about 700 pounds of available calcium per ton. And I took a soil sample after the field was harvested, and it's interesting, a soil sample was taken in November 30, and the pH was still 7.2. The organic matter is 1.4. Now, that's very good for our area. The calcium, we had 2,250 parts per million, which gave us an 86% saturation. The mag saturation was 9%, and the potassium was 2%. So, that part of the field wasn't yield checked specifically by itself. It just went in with the field. But we estimate that area was close to 100 bushels of beans. And as far as fertility, all he did was foliage spray at one time with 3 gallons of NA. So that was pretty amazing. Unfortunately, that was his last year of farming. He decided to quit because his equipment was old and he wasn't going to spend a lot of money to repair it. So he's out of farming. So I believe that was a Southern States variety of bean. I don't know the number. But as far as the crops in our area, it was pretty wet in the spring, and some people were able to get their corn in on time. Other people couldn't. So our corn now, some of it, the later corn is about waist high, and most of the other corn is all in tassel and hasn't been in tassel for 2 weeks. We had a dry spell there up until a week ago. And some corn actually burnt up on top of the sand hills and in the lower areas where the soil was all compacted from all the rain we had. Last year, 2018, we had about 70 inches of rain, whereas our normal is 44. And so we had a lot of soil compaction from that, and also during the winter. And if the guys didn't chisel plow that up or do something, actually the corn, even when it was knee-high, was rolling up and turning gray in those areas of compacted soil. So, now, last weekend, last Saturday, Sunday and Monday, we had an inch, and tonight we had another thunderstorm run through. Pretty heavy rain. I don't know how much we got, but it put it down pretty good. It was a whole big long band of it, so north to south. So probably most of the eastern shore probably got something out of that. So, all right, that's about all I have on that soybeans.
What two-part question here with regards to the nutrient management. A, what are the main nutrients that they're concerned about? And B, what are your expectations since it's been such a wet winter and spring? What are your expectations for what the Chesapeake's going to do?
Well,
Their big concern is nitrogen and phosphorus is the biggest concern, I believe. And of course, we're very phosphorus limited. This soil sample, let's see, it had parts per million. It had 486 parts per million. It's parts per million times 2 is pounds per acre. That's from an independent lab. And so with that kind of soil test, the farmer would be restricted. He could not apply any phosphorus at all, even as a foliage spray, legally. There are some people, I'm sure, foliage spraying that's not supposed to, but they do anyway. As far as what's going on in the bay, it was very interesting taking the soil samples this spring. Some of these very high levels of phosphorus, due to all the rain we had last year and during the winter, was cut in half. So all that phosphorus that was dissolved in the groundwater, it's out in the bay now. Unfortunately, I was talking to a guy who used to be the state agronomist. Well, in fact, he still works for NRCS in Washington. And I met with him about a month ago, and he was talking about some of these soil samples that having this reduced phosphorus, and he was thinking there was something wrong with the test or something wrong with the people who took the test and what have you. And I said, named Tim. I said, no. I said, I'm noticing this across the board. I said, some of the phosphorus levels are down by over half of what they were a couple of years ago. And he said, really? So what the environmentalists don't know doesn't hurt. As far as where this phosphorus went, is the way we look at it. So it's
let them think it's a test problem.
Yeah, they don't know that the phosphorus went like this. I'm not going to tell them. Yeah, so don't tell anybody here. So that's basically the situation here. The farmers are glad that the phosphorus test levels went down. That means they could apply some phosphorus. We have to do what's also called a phosphorus site index, which takes into account soil type, the phosphorus level, your tillage, your crop, your yield, what watershed you're in, so the water that comes off your land, where does it go, how far your cropping is from a ditch that drains water, and that's getting tighter all the time. By 2022, that will be totally in effect, and if you're basically over 133 or 34 parts per million on phosphorus, you won't be putting any phosphorus down.
How normal is it to be around that range or over it?
Well, down here on the lower eastern shore, where the poultry industry's been here for 100 years, you find very few farms like that. Some farms never had poultry manure or litter applied in that 100 years. Some, it's been 50 years since. Now, they're okay. They're showing lower phosphorus levels. In fact, this spring, some of the phosphorus levels were coming back as low as 15 parts per million, which that's unheard of.
Yeah. Well, this is all mostly sand, too, right? Or is it just in coastal areas?
Well, we have a lot of sandy loam, loamy sands. We also have a lot of silt loams. We do have some clay loams, but silt and loams and sandy loams are the predominant soil types here on the shore, basically.
Okay. Last question, I think. With this phosphorus site index that's going to be instated, how much, I don't know how to properly word this, how much damage do you think that's going to do to the fertilizer industry in Maryland? Are guys going to have to cut back a lot? It sounds to me like this drastically lowers the standards for what's allowed.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the phosphorus site index, that's been in effect for several years. It's
okay, I
gradually
misunderstood.
it's gradually being tightened down. It's now going to be called the phosphorus management tool, which that will kick in for some farmers next year. And fertilizer companies are selling very little phosphorus compared to what they used to.
Now, you said nitrogen's another problem. That's not as much, though.
No, they're not concerned about that. We're allowed to put down 1 pound of nitrogen per yield goal, per bushel of yield goal in corn.
Okay.
And as far as forage crops, grass hay, there the nitrogen recommendation may be 175, 200 pounds to the acre. So,
okay.
So they're not as concerned with nitrogen as they are with phosphorus. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Dennis. All right. All you guys listening who may not have mandated nutrient management yet, I think that it's going to be coming for everybody at some point, since water all drains somewhere. Maryland and places like Maryland and the northern states with a lot of lake bodies around the Great Lakes, maybe sooner. But yeah, so I think it's important to pay attention to this. All right, we've only got a few minutes left. Ron, are you on? Ron Mulford?
Yeah, I talked to him this afternoon. He was trying to be on.
Okay. Has anybody, Jim, did you hear from Ron at the beginning of the call or not?
No, I didn't. So I don't know if Ron, some of our guys run into trouble, getting on, and they can't get the index to work for them, and sometimes that is a problem.
Right. Yeah. And we had some pretty bad thunderstorms roll through here this evening, 9:30, and so who knows? The phone could be knocked out. I don't know.
Okay. Well, we'll get with Ron and find out what the situation is, and we'll just bring him on in August, and he can kind of fill us in. I got a couple of things that I would like to approach Dennis about on the picture with the soybeans. What do you on that particular field, Dennis? Do you know what the subsoil levels of calcium were, and what do you feel is as important as that topsoil in that sandier soil that you're working with?
Well, it's interesting. I take 16-inch samples, so I'm down in the subsoil with that. There's some reasons for that. There's some reasons we do that. So
that 2100 parts per million is a 15-inch sample, basically.
16-inch, 2,200 part per million,
In 16 inches, okay.
Yeah. So that's down into the subsoil.
Yeah, okay. Because we're starting to pick up in the vegetable publications. They've got these different products that they're coming out with, very fine products, to try to flush calcium up into the plant tissue. And see, the discussion has always been the research that we saw at Michigan State, where they showed that the calcium would not move from the plant down into the root zone. It only went from the root zone up into the plant. There are several companies that are starting to talk about that now, and they're selling a very fine calcium that you put on the soil. And they're discussing on their websites why that is, that the calcium will only move up in the plant through the xylem tissue, which is in the stem. In the stem, you have two conductivity roots, the xylem and the phloem. The phloem goes from the top down, and the xylem goes from the bottom up. And the basic plant physiology books are saying that calcium will not move top down. And see, this company is saying that any of these foliar calcium products that are being advocated aren't going to work because it'll never get to the root zone. You may get some into the leaf tissue itself or onto the growing point, but it'll never go down into the root zone because it just doesn't conduct that way. And that's why I think it's very critical, especially in legumes. They tend to translocate up very, very easily in large amounts, and so you've got to have a very large reservoir of calcium to work with. So it's critical for guys to have calcium down in that subsoil too.
Yeah, the lime that I've been making available to people, 98% goes through a 300 mesh screen. So
yeah. See, and that's they're talking about 1 micron material is what they're trying to sell. And again, I am not in disagreement with that, but you get into a cost factor there too. We could buy a whole lot of 300 mesh material for what they want for that 1 micron. And see, we're just saying you get the volume high enough, you're going to get the effect that you're looking for, plus affecting the biological in the soil. That's another thing that this company does talk a little bit about, but not in their advertising. Basically, on their website, they're discussing it. And see, this is the whole predicate of this corn fallow problem is that we got to get the biological functioning, and that's where that calcium is such a big factor. You didn't use any growers in the row on that, Dennis?
On the soybeans?
Soybean, yeah.
No.
Okay,
No.
just the foliage.
Just the foliage.
Yeah, 1 3-gallon spray. What was the timing on that?
Around bloom time.
Yeah, first bloom.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. With the nutritional additive,
Right.
do you tend to get your customers to try to use nutritional additive?
Yeah, most of them do.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Most of them do. I just usually give it a package, this much growers and this much NA goes with it. So
Sure.
I have a few that foliage spray without it, but
what's your, you've been doing that for a long time. What's your opinion of that on all this corn that's well behind here in the Midwest? Do you think that's something guys should take a look at?
Well, you mean foliage spraying with NA?
Yes.
Yeah, because I know, with Ron, some of the plots we did, we could consistently move the harvest date 7 to 10 days forward.
Right.
With 1 to 2% drier corn, and where it wasn't. So, we notice that quite often here.
What was your issue this spring as far as planting was concerned? Did guys really struggle, or were there open windows where they were able to get stuff done, or was it just done over a long period of time?
Well, there were some open windows, and some people struggled. Some people still planting soybeans. Most times they want to be finished planting soybeans before June 21. Mm-hmm. But the field has been so wet. Even in May, it's water standing fields, which in some areas that are low and poorly drained. But some people finished up beans last week. But I saw some fields that still aren't planted. They're worked up, but they're not planted yet. So.
What about, do you have a straw market down there at all, Dennis? Or is there any wheat that gets combined down there? What's that situation?
Everybody I talk to baled the straw, where they don't usually do that.
Was there a termination of wheat down there because it was poor and stand in that, or were they able to salvage most of the wheat stands?
Most of the wheat was salvageable. Because that's usually planted on a little higher ground. I saw some fields that was terminated, and they put corn into it. So
now, if a lot of these guys don't normally bale straw, what did they contract guys to come in, or did they just used to have the equipment, or what's that all about?
Well, yeah, there's guys that do custom baling in the large square bales, and so you drive around, you see stacks of them out in the field. So,
okay. And, which you normally wouldn't see, probably, huh?
Not on some farms. Some farms, some people bale straw routinely, but others don't. They just, when they combine the wheat, they want to be right in there planting beans. So, and our wheat harvest is finished up about 2 weeks ago, I guess.
Even your double crop beans, those guys don't make straw on that. They just go ahead and chop it fine and then go ahead and plant beans.
Right. Yeah. And some of these guys are looking for 50, 60 bushel beans behind the wheat. So.
Wow, that's pretty good.
And with issues out there in the Midwest, some guys even are planting corn behind wheat this year.
Yeah, that'd be pretty interesting. That usually doesn't happen, does it?
No, it usually doesn't. I had a customer that did it in the past, and it worked out good for him. So
did it?
There was some other people. Yes, yeah, very well. And some other people told me this year they were going to plant corn behind wheat.
The guys that did the baling, have you talked to any of them? What are they just going to wait and hope somebody comes looking for it, or have they got it figured out where they're going to go with it? Do you know anything about that at all?
No, I haven't. Because, the ones that usually bale the straw and stack it out in the field, they'll wait till fall or winter to sell it, usually.
I guess
that's going to depend on the market.
Sure. Gotcha. Okay, I think that pretty well enlightens our audience, Zachy. So I'll turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone, for coming on. The next call is August 8th, again at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be discussing the photo, which is a sprayer, and hopefully we'll be able to get Ron Mulford on, amongst some other guys, too. So Thanks for everybody for coming on. Happy growing season, I guess, and we'll talk in a month.